Hello, everyone. That Weems guy here for another episode, and we are back after being off last week. Um, I would say I would apologize for not having an episode last week, but I'm not sorry at all. I had put in a leave request that was initially turned down and denied due to a manpower issue, which was understandable. Um, but Friday night at like 9 o'clock, my supervisor said, "Hey, by the way, those two guys aren't going to that thing, so you can have next week off if you want to." And so I hit the road. I took off, was gone all week, went to the great state of Oklahoma and indulged in Brahms as many times as possible and a few other places and shot a Glock match. The lovely Jamie Meyer let me shoot with the staff on Friday. Had a wonderful time and drove back and got home last night. And here we are to record this episode. And tonight's guest is Mr. Shane Kerwin. Shane, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, Lee. Hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. If you would, introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. My name's Shane Kerwin. I run Personal Survival Solutions, a training company that I started in 2018. Prior to that, I did 24 years in the military. 16 of them were in special operations. I was at 5th Special Forces Group up at Fort Campbell. Through my time in the military, I was always in small units. I did scout reconnaissance and sniper operations in Korea and then the 82nd. Went to selection and assessment for special forces in 99 and got through that. And for some reason, they thought I was smart enough to attempt to do the 18 Delta course, which is the Special Forces Medical Sergeant course. And so 2.5 years later, I went through that course and got spit out and came up here to fifth group. Uh, Pretty much walked in the team room door and went to the fifth group sniper school at the time, and then went down to Fort Bragg and used to be able to challenge what they refer to as the level one course. You would go and do all the gated events, and I was successful on that. And then came back and took some Christmas vacation. And right after that, uh, when we came back into work, they said, "Hey, pack up all your stuff. We're going to Kuwait. And we're going to invade Iraq." While I was in the course, I missed Afghanistan because I had to finish up training in that, but I did get to do the Iraq mission there. We did the invasion, what ended up being OIF 1, OIF 2, and OIF 3 for myself anyway. All expense paid trips for the taxpayers to go fight a war. Uh, and I pretty much served in all the most of the medic roles in the unit. I was a junior medic and a senior medic. I was a company medic for a while. I was very fortunate. I got to go down and be a sniper instructor at the course that I originally took. And just due to circumstances, I ended up being down there about 7 years. So I started off as just one of the cadre, ended up being the senior cadre. And by the time it was all said and done, I was the non commissioned officer in charge of the course down there. We got to do some really good stuff, especially because, GWAT was going on. We had a lot of guys going down range and coming back and giving us lessons learned so we could update our course and make it more recent and relevant and realistic to what the mission set was. And then Army in its infinite wisdom decided to promote me. So I went back operational. I ran company operations for about a year. And then I got to pick a team and be the team sergeant or the senior enlisted on the team for 2 years until I retired. Did several trips there. I think I've got 7 trips overseas in support of GWAT and a few other ones for various ancillary things. And then getting around 2018 as I was retiring with some encouragement from some other instructors, they were like, "Hey, you should kind of start a business and do this stuff." And I had already been teaching about '07 while I was teaching at the sniper committee. I had a company approach me to teach on the armed citizen side. So I was doing that, for several years before I got operational again, and then started up the company in 2018 and retired and was doing that. And then kind of out the gate with retirement, I picked up a whole bunch of other jobs. uh, Barrett got a hold of me and was like, "Hey, we need somebody to teach the long range stuff." And I'd been familiar with the Barrett family for a while and people that had worked there, since it's in my home state of Tennessee and not that far. And so we did that for about a year. A old sergeant major that I worked for got a hold of me. He runs like a risk mitigation, crisis resolution company that also does like active shooter leadership stuff and that. I was doing some work there, and then I got asked to be a part-time instructor down at Royal Range USA in Nashville, which you're probably familiar with them.
Hmm.
And so I ended up going from just part time to full time, and they gave me a lot of grace and let me build up their program. And so I was working a lot down there, and that all kind of came to a head. And so things started dropping off. Barrett did a restructure. So we left on good terms with them, but they wanted to bring instructors up, from within their ranks.
Hmm.
And then the risk mitigation company, I'm actually still do some work for them, contract work with them now. Um, but we parted ways for a little bit, and Royal Range, it was never a forever thing. And I was like, well, I need to get back to the business. So it's been probably about 4 years ago now.
Hmm.
We rebranded the business, and it's just been doing it full time ever since. Uh, some of the things that I keep up with is I do keep my paramedic license. It's actually for the state of Georgia, and I live in the state of Tennessee. And people ask me, they're like, "So you are licensed to practice medicine in a state you don't live in?" And I was like, "Yep, that's absolutely correct." So, but there's a long story with that. When I went through the course and I was retiring, one of the things with the schoolhouse, when I did a refresher right prior to retiring, the state of Georgia said, "Hey, you got guys that are retiring. We'll take the credentialings from the schoolhouse and we'll give them a paramedic's license in Georgia." And so, since I'm not running around on rigs, I just use it to, keep up with things and augment our medical classes and have the credentialing. I've just kept it in the state of Georgia. I'm a certified law enforcement instructor for the state of Tennessee, and I'm also a instructor with Doc Williams' Shooting with X-ray Vision, Tactical Anatomy, which
Hmm.
is going to come up here as we talk about this upcoming class.
Sure.
And I've got a couple other instructor things from like Chuck Haggart with OC pepper spray. I got his instructor class and things like that. So, I try and do a few things here every year as a student, whether it's an instructor
Hmm.
class or just a regular class, because I think, we need to stay recent, relevant, and realistic with our training. And so we can do a really good look at our programs and be able to make sure that we're bringing the best product to the students. So, I'm actually going down. I'll see Tom in Florida here in November to do his instructor class. I finally have had the time and the schedules have matched up where I can get that go attempt to get that under my belt. I should say. I got to pass.
Yeah, you shouldn't have any problem with that. Um, you mentioned the Georgia license for paramedics. Now, I dabbled.
Okay.
I will not claim that I am actually a medical first responder, even though I have the certification. I don't
Hmm.
have the experience to go along with it to actually claim to doing it. Kind of a funny backstory on that. There was a certification like at a career development certification you could get through Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training. That was
Hmm.
the intermediate certification. Like when you
Okay.
graduate from the academy, you're basic, and then there's an intermediate, there's an advanced. Well, one of the classes you have to take, or under the old system, to get your intermediate was a 40-hour medical first responder course.
Okay.
And so I went and took that course just so I could get the intermediate certification. Finished that course on Friday, and the following Tuesday, I was the first person on scene for a real honest to goodness cardiac event.
Really.
And like I was all going home from work and the call comes over the radio and I'm like a get off the exit ramp, make a left-hand turn, and I'm at the location.
Hmm.
And so sure enough, I beat everybody there by a long shot. And here I am by myself on this actual cardiac event. I'm like,
Oh.
yeah, that 40-hour class just wasn't it. So I went back to the fire chief's office on Wednesday morning. It's like, oh, hey, what can I do to get some more stuff? And they actually had an 80-hour course coming up that had some practicals, and you actually rode on an EMT crew and everything like that for a while. and you actually had to respond to 10 calls under service and everything. It was get, uh, they call it the medical first responder. It's below whatever the lowest level of EMT is.
Okay. Hmm.
But there's like a bridge course you can take to get to whatever the lowest level of EMT is.
Sure.
And I went and took that and did some stuff, but I don't claim the fire department was nice and gave me a medical first responder number and shirt and a med bag. No, all of that to say this is that at the time Georgia had its own set of like EMT licenses. I think it was EMT basic, EMT advanced, and then paramedic.
Okay.
And then the next one above that was like cardiac something
Sure.
or
Yeah.
whatever. But Georgia had its own set of things, but then there was a national
Yep.
registry.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
When I went through the course,
yeah,
one of the first things that we did actually was uh, train up and then test for the National Registry paramedic. And I was really fortunate. I kept it
yeah,
for a number of years. It just was, worked
yeah,
out that I would be off deployment, because you had to
mhm,
recertify it every 2 years. And the schoolhouse did it great. They had a 2 week program, and you would go down there. In the first week, you would, hit all the requirements for your National Registry paramedic, and then you would do military medicine for the second week. And but then when I got promoted, even when I was back, because GWAT was going on and the unit was so busy, uh, they had to keep medics
yeah,
in their credentialing,
mhm,
and they were like, "You're technically not a medic anymore because you're a team sergeant or operations sergeant. We're not sending E8s down there anymore." So
yeah,
it lapsed, and so it was
yeah,
really nice when I went to retire. I went up and talked to our battalion med, who our physician assistant actually was an 18 Delta, and I said, "Hey, I'd really like to get my creds, back up to date
yeah,
prior to retiring." And he was like, "Well, I'm retiring too." He's like, "And it comes out of our budget." He's like, "I don't care, we'll pay for it. Go ahead." And so that's how I ended up with it ended up
yeah,
being the Georgia instead of the National
yeah,
Registry. And because I don't want to do that test again, because that National
yeah.
Registry test is a bear, man.
Yeah, and no, he's actually a sheriff now. Uh, was a EMT that was Georgia licensed and certified. Something came up with the National Registry, and he had like a certain time period in which he could do this test, and he would get nationally recognized as something, and he didn't do it within that time period. And then later he looked into it, and like now he'd have to go back and would have to take a new course to get a license that he could have gotten had he just taken the test. And it's just,
Right.
so when people hear this and they go, well, why didn't he get certified in this other state and all this kind of where he live, folks, the bureaucracy
Oh,
that exists on that kind of stuff, um, it's just unreal.
yeah.
And a certain date comes out, they should put out a whole bunch of new requirements, and you could have been like almost the one thing, and now it's changed, and you have to go and do all this other stuff, or you were certified, but now that certification doesn't exist anymore. And to
Yeah.
get whatever they say are the new certifications, well, you got to go do another class.
Yep.
It's just crazy.
And I'll
Um,
be honest, Georgia, when I
mhm,
renew each year, they're real, user friendly. They're real
yeah,
easy to work with, to get your continuing education stuff to meet the requirements. And
yeah,
literally by the time, and it's all online. So by the time, I go through the classes and that,
yeah,
and you upload them, to the state of Georgia's website. And,
mhm,
once it's done and you filled that requirement and, obviously you pay your fee and hit the
yeah,
send. I mean, I normally have my creds back within like 30
yeah,
minutes.
yeah. And it's just like crazy. Even with the peace officer standards and training here in Georgia, I mentioned the intermediate certification previously and advanced. At the time that I did them, there was like a list of core courses, just like you were going to get a college degree. You had to have this course, this course, this course, this course, so many elective hours, this kind of stuff to get it. And yeah, sometimes it wasn't easy to get into some of those courses.
Mhm.
Well, here a couple of weeks ago, they changed it to a straight. You get 150 advanced hours, you get intermediate, you get 300, you can get advanced. And so now a lot of cops in Georgia are going to be intermediate and advanced certified because they've got the training hours. They fill out the applications, they'll get them.
Hmm.
And on paper, they'll be the same as all of us who did the old thing.
Sure.
Um, I had to jump through all the hoops of doing it and everything. And now it's just, yeah, you just go to the class, go to enough classes and you get it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
You're right. It changes all the time.
yeah.
Sometimes not for the better.
Well, I'm happy for those guys, but
Yeah.
kind of like, well, what, I had to do all this other stuff, and these guys are just going to have it made. Uh, One of my old colleagues at the sheriff's office, I walked through the gate at an event the other night, and he was standing out there. He's like, "Hey, guess what? I'm getting my intermediate, my advanced, just because they changed this rule." I'm like, "Great." Yeah,
Hey, but you know what that allows
yeah,
you to do though is
right,
back when I went, when it was hard,
yeah,
you can start the stories out that way.
yeah. We walked uphill both ways to school.
Yeah.
It's, uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. Of course, I'm teaching youngsters now that I've been a cop longer than they've been alive.
Yep.
And so, well, I'm sure it's the same thing and for the senior guys in the military these days.
Oh yeah. I've got a young kid that he's a private in the 101st here at Fort Campbell, and he comes out and trains, and real good kid. But I'm like, yeah, I said I've got more time in the military than you've been on the earth.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier that you were junior medic, then senior medic, and then company medic. Could you explain what those are?
Yeah, so when you come in, just like anything, when you come into any organization, of course, you're the low man on the totem pole. Uh, the way that the teams are set up is they're a 12-man team. They've got a detachment commander who is a captain. You have a warrant officer, which the way that it works for people that aren't in the military is a warrant officer was a previous enlisted guy that decided, at least for us, most of the time, they decide that, hey, they want to be on a team longer because there's rotations through teaching jobs and various other
Mm-hmm.
jobs that pull you off a team, and so they'll put in their warrant packets and go, well, they're the other officer that's on the team. So if you do split team ops, you have two officers, and then you can split things down. And then you've got the senior enlisted guy, which is the team sergeant or operations sergeant, which is an E8. You've got an intel guy, and then you've got two of each specialty. So you have two medics if you have a full team, uh, two demolition guys, or what they call 18 Charlies, which are the engineers. So they build stuff, blow stuff up. Uh, you've got two communications guys, and then you've got two weapons guys. And so 12-man total. You could break the team down if you need to and do split team ops. So you got 6 and 6. So you've got an officer on each one. You've got a senior enlisted guy. Generally, the team sergeant will take one, and the intel sergeant will take the other one because he's normally one of the senior guys on the team. And then you can split down the other specialties. So and then you try and split them up between junior and senior guys, so it's
Okay.
evenly experienced on each of the teams if you do that, and then you can continue to split it down. So when I first got there, of course, I would because we didn't have a full team, but I had a senior medic that was already there, so I slipped into the junior role, and the senior role there is to mentor then the junior guy, so he kind of knows what it's like to be a team medic, and because what they teach you in the course, I mean, it's an amazing course, but they teach you what you need to know to graduate. And then you get
Hmm.
your team, and your senior guy teaches you what it's like to be a medic and a team guy. And so then you spend some time there, and depending on how your career goes, you might go back to after 3, 4, maybe 5 years, go back to the schoolhouse and be an instructor or work in some other capacity. And then you'll come back to a team where then you would fill a senior role. So now you've got this experience uh, through teaching and through your team time that now you get to be the senior guy that will mentor the junior guys. It doesn't always work out like that. It's not very often, especially with the medics, that you actually have two on a team, and you very rarely have a full team. Um, but I was on a specialty team, so we were kind of packed heavy, so we did have two medics and that. And but yeah, just through as my time on the team continued on, and I gained experience. My senior medic went somewhere else, so I jumped up to the senior spot, And then we had actually come back from uh, what ended up being OIF 1, and my company sergeant major called me down to his office, and he was like, "Hey, you're the senior medic in the company." And I was like, "How is that possible? I've only been here, I don't know, I'd maybe been there like a year, if that."
Hmm.
And he's like, "Well, you're the senior guy." So I got pulled down to be the company medic. Uh, and so what that kind of entails is, in a company there's 6 teams, generally. Uh, it fluctuates, but there's 6 teams. So as a company medic, you oversee all 6 teams and their medics, and kind of mentor
Okay.
them, help them if they do med orders, get ready for deployments and that. So that's why they want the senior medic in the company to hold that position, because he's got to oversee all the other medics from those 6 teams.
All right. So the teams that you've mentioned, is this like the so-called A team?
Yep, yep, that would
Okay.
be a Special Forces A team.
Okay. And John Holston explained to me one time, and we got to take a moment and remember John.
Yep.
Uh, Explained to me the difference between special forces and special operations once, and I've kind of lost that. If you could hit that again.
Yeah, so special operations is kind of all encompassing.
Hmm.
So it kind of takes in all branches of service. Each branch of service has some sort of specialty. So the Navy, everybody knows about the Navy SEALs. Um, the Air Force, they have their PJs and JTACs and various other people, which would fall under special operations. You've got the Tier 1 units, SEAL Team 6 or Dev Group. CAG or Delta, which those are the Tier 1 guys, and we can go down the whole road of the different tiers that are there. The Ranger battalions fall under it. When you get to the Marines, the MARSOC, their special operations are there. So that's kind of special operations all encompassing. When you talk about special forces, that is specifically the Army. Back in
Okay.
1952, when Aaron Banks started 10 Special Forces Group, they got called Special Forces, and it has stayed with us, to this day. In the 60s, when JFK came down to Fort Bragg, uh, General Yarborough at the time, he told everybody, "Hey, I want you to have this headgear. I want you to have this green beret." When President Kennedy comes down, and Kennedy liked it so much that he made it our official headgear. And so the Green Beret and Special Forces, are synonymous. They go
Mhm.
together. Um, but yeah, so the Special Forces in and of itself is just Army Special Forces, and then all these other special operations units fall under that kind of umbrella of special operations.
Okay. So special forces is Army Green Beret, special ops is all of the military branches that have all this.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Oh, didn't at one time weren't the Rangers black berets, and then Shinseki made that like the Army headgear, and then so the Rangers switched to tan. And what
Oh
is the
yeah.
current status of all of that?
So they're still tan as far as I know anyway. I've been kind of out
Uh,
of the loop, but I believe they're still tan. But yeah, that was a big to do when Shinseki came in and said, "Hey, the
mhm,
army as a whole needs to feel special, and we're gonna make their headgear the black beret." And I mean, the Rangers went, ballistic.
mhm,
I've never spent time in a Ranger regiment or Ranger battalion. I did get to go to Ranger school, so I'm Ranger qualified, and there is a difference.
mhm,
Um, so I was in the 82nd, so I wore a maroon beret, to designate a paratrooper. But yeah, the Rangers went completely ballistic, which I think was their right. And so they were
mhm.
like, "Yep, we're going to go to a tan beret because we need something to show that we're different."
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how that stuff gets into the culture and then becomes big battles and turf wars and
Gosh, yeah,
everything else.
yeah.
Yeah, was it a Navy pilot or an Air Force pilot that was forced down and like the Chinese held him for a few days or whatever? And supposedly this was all that was taking place, that when the Chinese forced open the plane, the pilot looked at him and said, "I'm here to pick up the berets from General Shinseki," or something like that.
I don't think I've heard that story. That's good though.
I can't remember if it was a Navy pilot or an Air Force pilot, but
That's pretty good.
yeah, and then it wasn't a fighter jet. It was like a plane with other capabilities. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's I don't know if that story is true or not, but it's too good to not be.
I was
That's
gonna
for sure.
say it sounds good, so we're just gonna go
Yeah,
with it.
yeah. Something somebody came up with on the spur of the moment. That's there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Um,
Um, so you have a new course coming up.
we do. Um,
Mhm.
So we ran the first one in July. It's called Armed Citizens Encounters, or what we refer to as the ACE course. Armed Citizens Encounters: Tactical Anatomy, Trauma, and Treatment. So yeah, it was something that we launched in July. We've got another one coming up in November here on our home range, Montgomery County Shooting Complex in Southside Tennessee. It's coming up on November 15th and 16th, and it's a course I'm like super excited about.
All right. Tell us about the course and how it came about.
So, I've been thinking about it for quite a while. Uh, watching stuff that John Hearn's doing, talking to John Holshin, when he said rest in peace, and some of the things that they're doing with adding realistic context into their training programs for armed citizens is something that I've always tried to do with my coursework. Because it's the demographic that I want to try and impact is, the armed citizen. I don't care about not that I'm opposed to it or I think there's anything bad with it, but like what I did in the military, I try to bring those experiences and the things that I did teaching armed citizens concurrently while I was in the military, but like not all that stuff that I did in the military is applicable to just an armed citizen. And so, doing classes where it's like, hey, we run around in plate carriers and helmets and, pretend we're Navy SEAL Special Forces, Delta Force, whatever, wasn't what I wanted to do. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that for people that do those courses. But I wanted it to be applicable to armed citizens that if they find themselves in a situation, they have the ability to take care of it and go home to their families at the end of the night. So I've been thinking about this for a while. In my other coursework, I really started emphasizing, especially with my medical background, like understanding the anatomy and where you need to target in a 3D environment. And I had in a minor way started putting in some 3D targets and adding applied tactics of movements and that into the training curriculum and getting them to understand the angles and where the vitals were. But then I started thinking about it a lot more, and I saw what Hearn was doing, and I said, and John Holshin and I talked quite a bit about what he was doing with the different visual go cues and that, which I think is super important. And actually, some of the stuff that you've done, Lee, because I was watching one of your videos it quite a while now, like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, where you were doing the visual initiation for the go signal with I don't know if they were students or officers where you told one that, hey, when you draw, that's the visual cue for the other
Yeah,
officer.
yeah,
And so I started, adding those things in, but off of what both the Johns were doing and some of the reading, I was like, hey, I want to do more of that type of stuff, and I want to do a class that is focused around that. And so, then kind of fast forward because I said I've been thinking about it for probably a year or year and a half. Um, I got asked by Steve Moses to be one of the instructors to the Tactical Anatomy Summit. And so I did the first one in Nashville and now big, part of that. And that just kind of, fanned the flames of what I was thinking about. And so because Steve asked me to be part of the Tactical Anatomy Summit, I sought out Doc Williams and I went out and took his Shooting with X-ray Vision instructor course this year. And that those two things really, made me like, I got to do this class because it's not meant to replace these or those two things. It's meant to augment them. So, what that's kind of how it came about. Um, and so what we're trying to do with the class is uh, give kind of a full package to people. They come in and I do a lecture on mindset and spectrum of awareness and building that up because I think that it's important and things that need to go into building an individual protective system. And then we move into the actual tactical anatomy part of it. And we start talking about, hey, what are the vital areas that we need to target if we're in an encounter that will with well placed shots and that fight quickly with the least amount of rounds, with us coming out and being on top and being able to go home. And so we talk about that in a 3D environment, and also understanding that where that anatomy lies, and as we change angles in the dynamic environment of a gunfight, is where does that anatomy lie,
Mhm.
and being able to visualize the pathway of the bullet uh, through where we're aiming, and is it going to go through and penetrate and hit those vital areas that we're targeting, and be able to stop that threat quickly. And so we talk about it in the classroom, and I've got a whole bunch of different visual aids so they understand, when we're saying, hey, high center chest, what's there? I know a lot of times we say, well, the heart and the great vessels and the lungs, but to sit in a classroom, see it on a PowerPoint, and then to pick up a 3D model of a heart and be able to show off of the PowerPoints like, hey, this is what we're talking about. And there's specific places on the heart, and this
Mhm.
is how the great vessels are, and this where it lies in the body. And I've got 3D mannequins with drawings on it, so we can take it for different angles so they understand, hey, when we're talking high center chest, this is where the heart and the great vessels lie, and that's what we're targeting. The same thing with the brain stem in the head, and then we talk about the pelvic girdle also, because that's a place that we can target if maybe that's the only thing that's available, or maybe something the high center chest isn't working and the head is moving, so we can go down there. And then once we get done talking about all that and everybody has a firm understanding, we go down to the range and we start with uh, flat paper targets, which we're using our PSS targets, which are made by multi-drill targets, which we did very specifically. I think Lee, my wife Callie is a graphic designer, so we spent probably about I don't know, 9 months or a year designing a target, and it's got very detailed anatomy on it of the heart, the great vessels, the craniocular vault, the pelvic girdle. And I know it's only one dimensional, but we got to start someplace.
Right.
And so once they start to visualize that, then we start to add more realism to it, and we move into some 3D targets that we put over top of the paper. And they're still kind of facing uh, belt buckle to belt buckle, if you will, but so that they understand that high center of chest. And then we just continue to add to it. So then we've got a variety of different 3D targets that we use, and they can be put at angles. And, we put T-shirts and the such on them, and hats, and tell them the different areas that we want target in so they can shoot those angles. And then when they go up, there's actually something that represents the heart that's there. We've got a whole target array where it's just heads, and there's something that represents the brain stem that's in there. So once they get done shooting, they can go up and they can pull out that heart simulator, or the simulator of the brain stem, and see, hey, was I actually effective? Did I visualize the path of the bullet? And yes or no. And we can hot wash that right then to make sure that they understand it. And then we start adding applied tactics. We got moving target that's in there with no shoots and things that are also the moving target is 3D. And so we do all that throughout the first day, so they really understand, hey, where does that vital anatomy lie at all different angles. And then the next day when we come in, we add a medical component to it, because you know as well as I do that bullets and pointy things go both ways,
Mhm.
and we might even come out on top, and we could still be injured.
Yeah.
Somebody that we love could be injured. And so we do about 4 hours of medical lecture and practical exercises where we continue to add realism. By the end of it, they're putting tourniquets on and packing bleeding wounds, and putting pressure dressings on, all with gloves on, getting things out of the packaging. But we start out, kind of vanilla. We start out slick. For example, with the packing, like I've got a wound cube, and they learn how the correct procedure for packing and putting a pressure dressing on. And then we, move over to the bleeders. And then once we get done with the medical piece of it, there about that 4 hours, then we go back to the range and we take the medical things and implement it in. So now they're understanding tactical anatomy, they're understanding uh, application, or excuse me, applied tactics
Mhm.
for realism on 3D targets. And then We might simulate and go, hey, you just took a round in the arm. Okay. What do you do? What are your priorities? Well, first you got to, stop the threat, get behind a piece of cover, maybe set your gun down, apply a tourniquet or whatever the appropriate intervention is there, and then get back in the game, conduct those post-shooting protocols. Is there other threats out there, et cetera? And so we work that into the afternoon. And then to complete it all and to culminate it is we do a force on force scenario where they've got to critically think and solve that problem of whatever that particular incident is, and then there's med play in it also.
Mhm. What are you seeing in the differences in performance just from visual start signals versus audible start signals?
Oh, so yeah, that's another thing. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the things that I really want to implement in there. And we talk I talk about reaction times and visual processing speeds and the difference with things.
Mhm.
Um, what I'm seeing for the most part is we'll start off with audible cues to get them going, but then as we move into the different visual cues, whether it's initiated off of one person, and I'll kind of do a almost like a rolling thunder, like you would do a shotgun, where I'll
Mhm.
tell the first person, when I tap you on the shoulder, when you draw out, it's a cue for the next person, and see if we can
Right.
get everybody going down. And what I'm seeing is a little bit of lag in the reaction time when it comes to the visual processing because of the different stimuli, and they have
Mhm.
to process information and decide, hey, what is my course of action going to be? Because as I do this, which I'm sure you do too, and I know Hearn does, and we know John Holstrom did, is maybe that visual cue isn't to actually shoot. Maybe it's draw out to a ready and give a verbal
Yep.
command. Uh,
Yep.
and so I'm seeing the reaction times, be slower with that, but I think it's way more realistic.
Yeah. Um, I've seen there's science saying that visual reaction is going to be slower than um, auditory reaction, but I think there's something really simple at play as well.
Hmm.
Is when you know it's an audible signal, it's like jumping the B and beep from the
Yep.
timer, is I can have my eyes fixed on the spot where I want
Yep.
the sights and the shots to go. Um, when I'm having to look for a start signal and I see the start signal one, I have to recognize that it is the signal. And
Hmm.
then I have to move my eyes back to
Yep.
where I want the shots to go and have to go there. And that just adding in that little bit of a complex thing, like having you have to watch the guy to the next, to the left of you and draw when they draw and
Yeah.
everything, how that in and of itself starts to cause some shooters to come unglued.
Yeah. Absolutely. And to add something else in there, I'll tell people, um, one of the things we have to understand is well, let me back up is, what do you expect to do when you go, to a shooting class? You expect to
Mhm.
shoot. And, we do plenty of
Yeah.
that in the class, but is that reality in the world when it comes to armed altercations?
Right.
A lot of times you might be, the preamble is there that the gun can come out, but just the introduction of the gun might be enough to, stop that situation.
Right.
But if we're going to classes, especially if there's just a audible cue that's there, and every time that audible cue comes up, as the gun comes out and we shoot a prescribed number of rounds,
Right.
okay, what are you going to do when it comes time to shoot on the street?
Mhm.
And the gun comes out of the holster. Maybe
Right.
the preamble's met, but now the situation changes. Do you have the ability to stop? Because anytime, we do an action, whether it's a good or bad action, we
Mhm.
establish or we strengthen a neural pathway through
Right.
myelinization, what most people call muscle memory. And so we one of the things that I try and do is get the students to understand that, hey, we got to be able to critically think and problem solve the whole time. If that
Right.
preamble is met, that I can draw the gun out and protect myself, we have to understand that as I'm presenting the gun, do I have the ability to stop? You know, understanding our visual processing speeds, which is one of the things that we do in the class. I have an exercise that, hey, what should our split times be? Because everybody on the Instagram, Snapchat, wants, point twos or point one
Hmm.
fours or whatever splits. But what happens if I'm trying to shoot a point two split and start burning it down, and all of a sudden the person's not there anymore? Do I have the ability to stop what I'm doing? And so I think that visual recognition, that visual stimuli is important to add into classes, because they have to understand, do they have the ability to process information throughout the whole time and solve that particular problem?
One of the things that I get to do in my current job is I run computer scenarios
Mm,
for students, and it's they have an actual gun that fires it, registers the shots on the screen, and everything like that. Um, the students that shoot based on emotion tend to fire more shots at a faster rate. They have either initial misses and then they walk the shots into the bad guy on the screen, or the bad guy had dropped from a shot and they're still shooting where the bad guy was,
yep.
versus someone who is in their rational mind draws, puts shots on the guy, stops when he falls,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of just humans being humans, or if that's all the training they've had up to that point is shooting like a 8-inch circle or a 8 by 10 inch rectangle on an audible signal. And then this is the first time they've actually had to put thinking along with the shooting.
Yeah. I I think you're probably right there. I mean, if all you do is one thing, you get a audible signal or stimuli to go, and you're always going to shoot, and maybe you're doing it off of a timer, so you're
Mhm.
trying to beat the timer or best your score. uh Neuroscience shows, and I'm not a neuroscience by any stretch of the imagination, but it does interest me. How do we learn things? How do the students learn things? How can they recall them under stress? And it's proven that anytime you do an action repetitively, whether it's a bad habit or you're doing a good habit, is that's what you're gonna result to, especially when we're in an adrenalized state.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of twofold. I think it's maybe an error in their training methodology up to that point, and then also, even though it's a simulation, uh, you probably see it in some people get really keyed up, and so, like you said, when they're doing things through emotions instead of rational thought, uh, those two things combined can be catastrophic.
Yeah.
At least that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Sometimes I get the student that just freezes and
Okay.
the whole thing plays out in front of them. And
Yeah.
even though the instructions are interact with the characters on the screen, do all that kind of stuff, and sometimes they'll try to cover it. Well, I thought I was just supposed to watch. Like, why do you think we put the gun in your holster and gave you a brief on how to use it, gave you the instructions,
Yeah.
everything else? And you get some that their initial response is, "Wow, that happened fast."
Right.
But there's
Yeah.
like a 30-second lead up to it. And like you and I would be seeing all the clues on the lead up to it and everything. But for these folks, they've never had to process
Mm,
anything, and then now all of a sudden they have to work this tool
yeah.
as part of the process. And not everybody has access to a computer simulator where they can run that stuff. But things like in your course, where you can go out and you can do it with a group of shooters somewhat on the line, working some things in, and then individual scenarios, the value of that is going to translate over to if you're ever actually in a real incident. That it's not, I call it the blue screen of death.
Yeah.
For us old people that remember the old Windows machines, that when the hard drive would crash and you get
Oh,
that
yeah.
little blue dot in the middle, and then it would just kind of spread, and all of a
Yep.
sudden your screen would be blue, and that computer was toast.
Yeah.
Um, when you see that playing out, it's their mind hasn't accepted that's where they're going to have to go.
Yep. Well, and I think, when we talk about this in the portion of our mindset lecture, is
Mhm,
uh, most people, and it, it's good and bad, but most people don't have an experiential base in violence.
mhm.
So when something does occur, they try and lump it into that normalcy bias as something that they're familiar with. And I think that's where that big pause is. Um, and I see it on, we do any type of force on force scenarios, and we don't do a lot of it, but we've got a couple classes. The ACE class is one where they'll get a scenario at the end. We have a 3-day arm protective measures, which is kind of an all encompassing uh, course of everything kind of we teach uh, for the armed citizen with pistol and medical and vehicle tactics and defense and home defense and mindset and all that stuff. They get a couple scenarios there, and you can see people and actually kind of know their experiential base by how they work the scenario. And are they thinking and making good decisions, or do they just have that blank stare because they've never experienced anything like it and just try to get through it? And they say exactly like you said, with the video simulator is, oh my god, it happened so fast, or I don't even know what happened, I can't tell you. Um, and I think that's a because we're in a controlled environment and there's no consequences. uh that's a good place to learn. And I tell students, I'm like, hey, I'd rather you make the mistakes here, screw up scenarios, do whatever, as long as we're safe and that here, because there's no consequences, than trying, having it happen out on the street and it being your first encounter and it not working out for you, because that's detrimental to you and you might not go home.
Yeah, I ran a little experiment with this latest group. Is I had 5 cadets or 5 students. I pulled them out and I put blue guns in the small of their back, like tucked into their waistband. And then
Hmm.
they didn't know what they were doing. And I walked them back in front of the rest of the class, and I said, I want each of you to imagine you have a wallet in your right back pocket. Get it out of your pocket for me. And they did. They simulated doing that, and they said, now I want each of you to draw the pistol from your waistband. And they drew the blue gun from their waistband. And then I asked the class, okay, what did you see? What did you see? Tell me what was the difference between those two motions. And they picked up on it. If you're going to reach to get something out of your pocket, your hand typically turns one way. But every time they had to reach to get the pistol out of the waistband, their hand turned the opposite way. The
Hmm.
elbow went to a different angle, and then the shoulder rise when they reached to get the pistol out of their waistband. Well, then when I took them to the computer simulator, I gave them a scenario where a guy pulled a pistol out of a waistband from behind.
Hmm.
And it was amazing how some of the students, like as soon as they saw the angle of the elbow and the shoulder rise, they started their action or their
Uh-huh.
response, versus when I haven't done that demonstration with previous classes. And then
Uh-huh.
I would ask them, explain to me what happened. And some of them being good students, like, well, I saw this demonstration where when people reach for something and like they work that into their explanation,
Yeah.
you don't get that just by standing in a class for 2 days shooting at a piece of paper stapled to a. You have to do that to learn how to run the gun,
Sure.
but when it to actually use the gun or not use it as the situation may demand, which is just as
Mhm.
maybe even more important to learn.
Yeah.
Um, but just picking up on the visual cues of what the so you're talking about the experiential learning, and that's what prompted me to go down that road.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example. And you know, like you were saying, and I tell students, I'm like, or I'll ask them the question, I'll pose the question to them, and we're very fortunate in our local area here, we've got like we like to refer to as a lot of repeat offenders, that we keep getting students coming back, which
Yeah,
I guess we're doing something right if they keep coming back. But
right.
you know, as we get down the road, or even in some of the earlier classes, I'll be like, is shooting hard? At first they're like, well, yeah, but that's like, no, really, think about it. Is
Yeah,
shooting hard? The application of the fundamentals of marksmanship, is it hard? And they're like, well, no. And I was like, you're absolutely right. I said, But when you step down the path as an armed citizen, once you learn the mechanics and you learn to apply the fundamentals of marksmanship, it's all the other things that add complication to it.
Hmm.
And that's where, we need to be training, because it's not difficult to shoot. Now, it critically thinking and solving that problem,
Right.
because, what's a gunfight? It's just a problem for you to solve. It has deadly
Hmm.
consequences and involves, guns and knives and stuff, but
Right.
it's still just a problem for us to solve. And in order to do that, you got to be able to critically think to get to the point where you're justified to
Hmm.
shoot and not go to jail after the fact.
Right. Yeah. The shooting problems that are typically faced in the domestic United States are not that difficult skill
Yeah.
wise to pull off.
Mm-mm.
Like if we were to set that up with, cardboard even moving targets on a range and take somebody out there, all right, you're going to be in this incident. This is your shooting problem. Like it's a match stage. It's not that. They're just not that hard.
Yeah.
It's recognizing the situation that you're in
Hmm.
for what it is, and then taking an appropriate reaction that is justified based on the law of wherever you happen to be standing at that particular moment,
Yep.
and all the politics that comes into play and everything that can happen downrange of that. That's the hard part.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
And
because it goes back to, we talk about safety at the beginning, we give safety briefs and medical briefs,
mhm,
and, um, you know, what's rule number 4? Be
yeah,
sure your threat and, what's behind it, what's around it, what's in between you and the threat, because, we live in a
yeah,
360-degree world, and not everybody out there deserves to be shot,
right.
you know? I think a great example of what I refer to as tactical patience and performance in a stressful environment is Jack Wilson down in Texas with the church shooting. You know,
Hmm.
when you watch the interviews with him, uh, everybody was hitting him up because it's like, oh, his draw stroke was slow to first shot and blah blah blah. Um, but he made a subtle step to the left, and he also read what was going on and understood his backstop. Took the shot that presented itself, which happened to be the head, and he delayed because there was, you know, friendlies that didn't need to be shot. And I think
Hmm.
he had great presence of mind to be able to end that situation. And I think it's a really good example.
Uh, and his start signal wasn't a beep. It was, oh my gosh, Bob just got shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Definitely visual.
if you watch the rest of that video, you see at least one other church security member come in and is just waving his gun
Yep, I remember.
all over the place, and like all the innocent people that he just covered with his muzzle.
Yep.
And if he's doing that, God bless him. He was there in the middle of it, and I wasn't. And yeah, he responded to the to the danger.
Hmm.
Um, Gotta wonder if his muzzle discipline was that weak. What was his trigger finger discipline like?
Right. Yep.
And
Probably not so good, I would
yeah.
imagine. And I hate to I try never to armchair quarterback, but I think it's good
Hmm.
to analyze those situations and learn the good and the bad from them, and take
Yeah.
those teaching points.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, that's all the things that that add the complexity that you got to be processing. Yeah, maybe it's a shoot solution and everything is warranted, but what else is going on? What if I have a shoot through? What if I have a
Hmm.
catastrophic miss? Where's my muzzle as I'm moving around other people or getting people out of the way? Where's my trigger finger? Like you said, is it in high register? Um, so, all that adds to it where I said that
Hmm.
when it comes down to shooting, that part's relatively easy. It's all the other stuff.
Right. And just the concept of a ready position.
Yep.
If I've only used low ready because I'm on a square range all the time, well, now I have 5-year-olds running all around because and I'm pointing my muzzle down low. Well, I'm aiming it right at their heads.
Yep.
But when you teach a concept of ready, is the muzzle is diverted from anything that you do not want to hit. Coming to a high ready in position when you got people seated in church pews and children running around is, if you're going to have the gun out in the first place.
Right.
a better ready position. So if you teach the concept versus the position, this
Absolutely.
is the concept of a ready position or a safety position,
Hmm.
whichever way you want to phrase it,
Yep.
versus these techniques.
Yep. And you nailed it on the head. And that's a big thing that, we try and do is, principles and concepts that lead you to an end state that
Mhm.
is defined success for whatever you're trying to do. And
Right.
so, those principles and concepts are certain things that you can't violate, but as long as you don't violate them, at least in my opinion, it's like, did you solve the problem? Or were you
Right.
successful? I don't really care how you did it. If you do it
Right.
different than the way that I did, who am
Right.
I to tell you that it's wrong? As long as you were successful. And, I think that's, when we start talking about getting students to learn things and understand things, I think that's an important concept too, because if you say, no, if you don't do this technique or you don't do it the exact way that I'm doing it, it's going to get you, killed out
Right.
on the street. Um, or hey, this is, here's kind of your parameters. As long as you don't violate this, it doesn't really matter how you do it,
Right.
as long as you're successful. And I think it leads to uh, students being able to build their own individual protective system that's unique to them,
Hmm.
because everybody's different. And, just like you pointed out with, the concept of, hey, avert the muzzle to a safe or, area if the gun is out and you've got to decide, it doesn't matter whether it's averted down, averted up, or whatever the case may off to the side, whatever the case may be. But are you paying attention to what's going on and what's that muzzle covering?
Hmm. Yeah. You mentioned Jack Wilson. He was part of the Heroes Conference that Ed Monk hosted. Ed's been on the show a couple of times. Jack did a presentation at the Heroes Conference,
Uh-huh.
and I think Citizen Safety Academy, Akil and Tiffany's thing,
Hmm.
uh, recorded the Heroes Conference, and they were making a video of that available
Oh,
online. I don't know if it still is. So if you go to Last Resort
uh-huh.
webpage or go to Citizen Safety Academy's webpage, that may still be out there,
Okay.
where people can get it and watch that. Where he did a presentation, the guy from the Garland, Texas, that shot the two militant jihadists that were coming to shoot up the cartoon thing or whatever it was,
Hmm.
art thing. Um, there was a pastor that took out an active shooter at a Walmart, and there was um, the guy was shooting up the church across the street from his house, and
Oh, yeah.
the guy that ran out with the AR-15 and took care of business.
Yep.
Those were the four presenters at that. So that video is available online somewhere right now.
Okay.
Um, not just for you and the audience. So
Yeah.
if you want to see a long, warm presentation about any of those incidents, especially the one you mentioned there in the church with Jack Wilson, that is out there.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
You said something earlier that I want to come back to, and I intentionally let the conversation go somewhere else so I could bring it back,
Mhm.
just so I could imagine Hearn sitting there listening to this tomorrow, going, he said, and you didn't ask about that. I did it on purpose just for my own amusement."
Good.
Um, uh, I was talking with Steve Havey this week. We were talking about, friends that went on a trip and came back mad at each other. And I
Uh-huh.
said, that's why I don't travel with friends except for Hearn, because if I annoy him, that's just part of the fun. Right.
Yeah.
Uh, you mentioned split speeds.
Mhm.
And then we got off of that subject. Come back to split speeds for a second. What do you see?
Um, so the way that I do it, because I've been doing research, experimenting with things, watching students, and um, so I'll give you an example, and then I'll loop it back around to what I do is I have a student. He's a great guy. Um, he loves to shoot. Like it's turned into kind of comic relief for us at classes because if I'm doing any type of lecture or anything, and I ask if there's any questions, he'll stop me and he'll ask, "Are we going to shoot?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're going to shoot." And
Yeah.
but he likes to shoot. He likes to shoot fast, and he doesn't always see his sights, or he doesn't know where his bullets are going. And so we've talked about it, numerous times of like,
Mhm.
hey, you got to dial it back and, you know, get excuse me, call your shot where your sights are in relation to where the bullet's going to go. And you also have to process information to see, every time that the gun goes through cycle of function and felt recoil and the sights come back, did you get a desired effect? Are they standing there still? Is it still warranted to shoot? And it's been a real difficult thing. um, Partially his personality. He's a great guy. Part of it's he was born not in the United States. He's a U.S. citizen now, and he just didn't quite understand the concept. I think we've finally gotten it to him now because he just couldn't understand. He's like, well, if I'm relatively close within, armed conflict distances that we generally see, with armed citizens, he's like, wouldn't it be better for me to just hammer him with 5 or 6 shots and they're all going to go in him, right? And I'm like, not necessarily. And he's like, you can't tell me that somebody's just going to fall down. And I was like, oh yeah, it happens all the time. And
Mhm.
so with that, and I've always thought about the split speed or split um, times thing, and so I started doing a lot more research in that and understanding again our reaction times and how we visually process things. So kind of the way that I skin that cat and I had the students experience it is I tell them I'm like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to shoot different split times, okay, and we're going to start out relatively slow, and we're going to shoot a 1 second cadence. So just 1,000 bang, 2,000 bang, or one Mississippi, whatever you want to do to
Mhm.
count. And I tell them I'm like, hey, if you do it the way I told you, I've put it on a timer. It's going to be pretty darn close, and that's what we need. And so I'll have them, shoot a 1 second split for 5 shots, a 5 shot cadence. And then I'll ask them, I'm like, hey, if your sighting system wasn't in an acceptable target area, did you have the ability to fix it within, that cadence? Or if the situation changed, you had the ability to stop? And pretty much everybody across the board is like, oh yeah, I could fix the problem if need be. I could stop if the situation changed. I was like, okay, well, now we're going to cut it down to half of that. We're going to do a 1/2 second split, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And I said, same deal. I said, if your sighting system isn't in an acceptable target area, can you get it there within that cadence? Or if the situation changes, can you stop? And we'll let them shoot it a couple times. And generally, what I find is, at least with the students that we've had, is about 50% of the class will say, yeah, I could make a correction if need be. I could stop, or I can auto correct my sights and get them to that acceptable target area into the high center chest or wherever we're targeting. The other half will say, I don't really know. I don't think I could do it. And so then just for fun, I'm like, okay, I said, well, all of us, what we're going to do is we're going to cut it in half again, and we're going to do, 1/4 second splits, or as fast as you can pull the trigger. Okay. And I'll tell them, I said, for me personally, I said, when I get down to, a 0.25, or I'm, really getting after it, maybe a little bit faster, I said, I can see if there's a problem or if the situation changes, but I said, I can't stop. That round is going wherever the sighting system is and the muzzle is, or,
Mhm.
if they're not there, it's still going down range, or maybe even more than one. I said, because I can't visually process and react to a change at that fast a speed. And so, then, and I'll ask them all that. And then we go back to, and I ask individually, I was like, hey, where were you at where you think was like right at the red line of, but still having the ability to autocorrect your sites if they're, not where they need to be, or be able to stop. And I try and get an idea where they're at.
I have a beagle and a shepherd fight going on in the background here, so that may bleed over.
Do you?
Uh, I,
Well,
I don't know what's that.
I said I closed the door to my office, although we had our miniature golden doodle and a shepherd out there whining earlier.
Something just became something that the other one wanted, and now there's a battle. I've heard this take place countless times before, and it's crazy how they'll be in the house all day together, and then all of a sudden, one thing becomes this is the thing that they all must possess,
Yep. Oh, we
and then
get
it
the same
becomes
thing, man, and it's normally with rawhide bones. There's
yeah.
147 rawhide bones laying around the house, but one of them picks one up, and it's that one today, and
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah. That sounded like the shepherd cornered the beagle because
fight.
the shepherd's herding bark started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. That's exactly what just happened. Uh, because the shepherd just came into the kitchen to say, "Yep, all
nice.
right, all right, we can get back to where we were at." I'm sorry, that's life in this household. So
Yep.
it's
Nope. Same as ours. Same as ours. I'm
yeah,
glad we're not the only ones.
yeah,
Um, but anyway, so I'll ask them and try and identify, like roughly where they're at. So those people, when we're at a half second, they're like,
mhm,
I'm not really sure, so it's like, okay, maybe, a point 0.6 or a point 0.7, heck, or 0.75. And we try to identify that with people. And then what I tell them, especially in that course or in different places in our other coursework, is I was like, for the remainder of the course, I want you to shoot within that threshold about where the red line is, but I want you to have the ability to, if the situation changes, you can stop, or if you need to correct your sights because,
mhm,
hey, we presented the gun or we moved offline and presented the gun and my sights weren't in the optimal spot. I want you to target that area and I want you to be very accurate and precise with your targeting. So fix it and make sure you're
yeah,
shooting within that threshold because that's going to be reality out in the world. You might get lucky, and we've got a video that I've added in, which I'll tell you, Lee, is a big feat for me with PowerPoint, and that is actually get videos in there without any
mhm,
help. Uh, but there's one, it was a law enforcement officer. I can't remember exactly where it's off the top of my head, but they're on a walkway, on a bridge going, spanning a river. And the guy comes running up with the machete, and it's a female officer, and she draws out in one shot and drops the dude.
yeah,
And so I said, there's a great example of accurate and precise fire in a vital area. And I think she went high center chest. And so a significant drop in blood pressure. Um, and also, what if he kept coming, or excuse me, what if we were training outside our threshold to visually process information and, we're shooting jailhouse splits and burning it down? How many rounds would have went, out into the atmosphere and the general public that's out there? So
right.
I think it's an important thing.
That one topic of split speed tends to be that's the chasm between competition shooters and people who actually work the application side.
Yep.
And yeah, no matter how many times it's been proven, you get folks from the competition side. Oh no, 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 I can do that, whatever. But they never test their theory.
Right.
Um, and I don't do it as much as I used to. I used to love inflaming the internet. And one of my favorite ones I did is I put a quote out there. Uh, the more I see something like on the lines of the more I see someone clinging to metrics
Hmm.
is there's an inverse relationship between that and their actual application experience.
Yep.
And it's funny how people from the application side of it, it's not slow down, it's be more deliberate.
Yep.
You
Yep.
had I had dinner with David Cagle the other night, and he made a very good way of pointing it. Every shot must be tied to a sight picture.
Yep. Yep. That's a good way
And
of putting it.
to like the master and grandmaster level USPSA shooters that on a square range or a competition range can shoot sub 0.25 with individual sight pictures and doing things and their old reactive shooting, all that kind of stuff. They don't understand that they're not the norm.
Right.
You
Yep.
know, Michael Jordan will tell you that dunking from the foul line is easy.
Yeah.
See, watch me do it. There's a certain bit of superhumanness in there, or there's a certain bit of you have focused so much work onto this one thing.
Yeah.
And you could, and I'd be interested. I know Holston was trying to get some of the GM level shooters to come do his his program there, and some of them. were given the opportunity and wouldn't do it.
I know, I had talked to him and we
Yeah.
talked specifically about this. It was a while ago. It was at TechCon. Well, the last
Hmm.
time I went, I've missed the last 2 years,
Yeah.
but he had said at that time, or it was either then or when I talked to him at Girl and a Gun when we were out there presenting earlier
Hmm.
this year. Can't remember which, but that he had had a couple. I don't know if they were GMs or if they were,
Right.
master rated or whatever. And
Hmm.
he said he was like, however many he had, like 50-50 of some of them they couldn't stop, they just tried to burn it down, and then some of them
Yeah.
actually understood and had tactical
Yeah.
patience and were deliberate in their
Yeah. Yeah. I think what he was finding is that the ones that did attempt it, once they realized what they had to do,
Mhm.
they were able to do it at a better rate than the lesser skilled people.
Yeah,
So there is a reason to get extremely skilled with the firearm.
sure. Yeah, no, I
Because
mean, I actually heard
yeah,
today, Adam
yeah,
Welch was, he had a video that I saw on,
mhm,
I think it was Facebook or whatever,
yeah,
and, talking exactly about this, and,
right,
he said exactly what you just said. He's like, "There's nothing wrong with trying to get faster with your splits to be more proficient in that,
hmm,
but you also have to understand it." And I'm paraphrasing here, so Adam, if you
right,
hear this and I screw it up, I apologize, but
right,
you know, you have to couple it with the context which you're going to apply it in the particular way that we're applying it as an armed citizen. So you have to understand those thresholds of visual processing and shoot within those so that if something changes, you have that
right,
ability to stop, you know, because it's not I look good on Instagram, because I can shoot jailhouse splits or what have you.
hmm,
It's you might there's a very real possibility that if you send rounds out into the atmosphere there, out into the general public, that you could end up going to prison.
yep.
And you know it better than I do because I don't have a law
Mm.
enforcement background, but you know it way better than I do.
Oh yeah, very easily if the guns come out and go to work, or even if they just come out, we could be
Yeah.
looking at prison time.
Yep.
So one, you have to process the whole scene before you even make the decision of drawing the pistol.
Hmm.
And there's an inverse relationship there too, is because if you get really good at drawing the pistol and you recognize sometimes you might draw the pistol without a conscious thought to do so.
Hmm.
I have done that.
I have
Um,
too.
I remember when I was in a cadet in the academy and I was eating lunch one day and there's old salty instructor uh, sitting there and I asked him, how would I know when to draw my pistol? How will I know when he's Weems, just get good at doing it. Time comes, you need it, it'll be there. And lo and behold, the first time I actually drew the weapon in the field, drew my pistol, like, hey, he was right. Oh, well, well, and let me look back at what I'm supposed to be doing here.
Yeah.
But then to another instance, Shane, I don't even remember drawing the pistol,
Hmm.
but I remember the sight picture on dude's head.
Yeah.
Um, Now, completely legally justified,
Hmm.
but I have no conscious thought of the decision to do it.
Hmm.
And so I could foresee a situation where somebody's gotten so good at it that they do it when it's not legally justified, and then they're standing there with a gun in their hand. But I think the chances of that are a little nil because having to recognize the situation and then one being into that. So I'm not saying don't get good.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I In the last year I had surgery on both eyes.
Hmm.
My computer is completely haywire now. And I have gone back to shooting matches to try to rewire my brain and hands together to get back to where I was
Hmm.
prior to the eye surgeries.
Yeah.
Just that little bit of medical change or physical change has rewired, it was causing my brain to not work the way it used to
Yeah.
and what I can perceive and what I can do. And
Hmm.
I'm trying to rewire all that back.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's so much that goes into the equation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a big thing is too is, understanding and now great. I mean, I think, as students, if you're a dedicated student, you should want
Mhm.
to know several layers deep. But I think us as instructors need to understand and also and develop our curriculum so that we're reinforcing this. Is you're absolutely right. You need to practice presentations.
Mhm.
Draw the first shot. All those mechanics. Um, so that it gets into the procedural long-term memory, so that the subconscious does it to
Mhm.
leave up free up excuse me, words are hard
Right.
sometimes, uh the forebrain or the conscious brain to be able to critically think
Right.
and solve that problem. But in addition to the subconscious part of it is you also have to train those other things. It's just not the physical skills of
Right.
a drawing and presenting the pistol. When can I draw and present the pistol? What's
Mhm.
the preamble that has to be met? What are the laws in my state? uh
Right.
you know those things should all be automatic too, as you're processing this information, and hopefully you're coupling it with good realistic training that's recent, so you build that experiential base and those pathways, so it gets into the subconscious, so then you can process the conscious brain can process new information. But you're right, there's a whole lot that goes into it that a lot of shooters, let's say,
Mhm.
or gun owners, because I kind of put people in the category of, like, you start out as a citizen,
Mhm.
whether you were born here, or, you came through it legally, and then you purchase your first gun. Now you're a gun owner, and then you go get some training, and then you start down the path of being an armed citizen. But I think a lot of shooters and gun owners, they go out and they do the physical act of shooting, but they don't understand the importance of all the other stuff, and how the shooting piece is a really, really small percentage.
I think I have just coined a new phrase here in my head, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it out there right now, and we'll see how long it takes for other people to come up with it and claim it. And it may not be new. There's nothing new out there. Technical skills in context.
Well, I like it.
If you're not practicing the technical skills in the context in which they will be used,
Yep.
you're aiming for trouble. Uh,
Yep.
and then if you tie that back, you look at these six principles of adult learning.
Mhm.
One of them is learning within context of the person's life. And
Yep.
it's, you know, adults learn better when they learn in context. How
Mhm.
does this apply? Yeah. Why do I want to learn that? Oh, this is why I need to learn that. The learning is stronger.
Yep.
And if you're learning the technical skills with the context at the same time, I think they're going to wire together better than if you just go out and you do all the technical skills and then you start coming back and trying to do the context, or you never get around to the context, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden it's a real life situation. So that's where classes like what you've got coming up, I think, are extremely vital.
Yep. No, I agree, and I think, like you said, like we talked earlier, as far as the shooting part, it's easy, and so, in coursework, whether it's the
Mm.
upcoming class that we have, the ACE class, um, or any of the other curriculum, and just say some of the beginning classes, like our covert protected pistol, when we run the series or what
Mhm.
have you, is once we get the mechanics down and the application of the fundamentals of marksmanship, which goes relatively quickly, then we start adding that application of applied tactics of, now we're going to start adding that realistic context to things, where, okay, we're going to take a single lateral step in the draw, and explain why it is,
Mhm.
and then continue to build on that with multiple steps and angles and various things, and so that it's building blocks and people understand the linkage of adding that context to things, uh, you know, for the type of environment that they're gonna maybe have to use this stuff in.
Mhm. Now, Brian Hill will probably take technical skills in context and actually do something with that. I'll just go, wow, I just thought of this good saying, and then that's all I'll do with it. So,
Love Brian. He'll come up with a
yeah,
whole big dissertation on it, which
yeah,
we'll really appreciate. I don't know
yeah.
about some of the others, but we might appreciate.
I'll appreciate all the work Brian will do with that.
Yes.
Uh, it'll save me from having to do it. Uh, anything about the class that I did not ask you about?
No, I don't think so. I think we got, what the overall part of the class was. I'll reemphasize, we have the one coming up
Yeah.
this year in November 15th and 16th
Uh-huh.
in at Southside Tennessee at Montgomery County Shooting Complex. You can find it on the website. Starting next year, we've got one down at Outpost Armory in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. We'll be doing that class. And then one of the things that we did with this class also is we've built it so that it can be go on the road. So if people
Okay.
want to host us different places, I know we've got one scheduled um, with Bear Arms out in Virginia sometime next year. But we really designed this class because we feel that it's important material that not saying that other people aren't doing it, but the way that we do the class with the mindset and awareness and the tactical anatomy, and then going out and doing it on the range with the 3D targets and applying tactics to things, and the medical and implementing the medical on the range. We think it's unique, and there's not anybody or many people doing it like that out there. So we've specifically designed it to be a hosted class and go on the road with it, so we can take it to people. Um, but And then also what I will say with it, and I mentioned it kind of earlier, is we do have the Tactical Anatomy Summit. We're through with them for this year, but we've got 4 or 5 already scheduled for next year, and I know we have one in 2027. Uh, Callie, my wife, she did the a website for the Tactical Anatomy Summit. So if people are interested in that, but this course is meant to augment the Tactical Anatomy Summit. Doc Williams's Shooting with X-Ray
Mhm.
Vision, because we do different things.
Right.
The Tactical Anatomy Summit, yeah, it hits tactical anatomy, but like Chuck does a ballistics lab that's there, we don't do that. In
Right.
the Tactical Anatomy Summit, we do a little brief medical and we talk about it. We're in our ACE class, we do quite a bit of medical in there, so you get a lot of hands-on. So they're meant to build off each other and complement each other.
Mhm.
So a couple different avenues there, but I think we've hit most of it for the
All right.
class anyway.
All right. Well, I will put a link to the class in the show description
Great.
so that people can get to that. But just could you give people the names of the companies and the web pages again?
Sure. Personal Survival Solutions is our company. You can get it at www.personalsurvivalsolutions.com. Okay. It's the Armed Citizens Encounter, Tactical Anatomy, Trauma, and Treatments. Okay. You can get that there. And then the Tactical Anatomy Summit, I believe it's just www.tacticalanatomysummit.com. It'll come up as TAS when it
Hmm.
pops up there. Um, and then you can get the scheduling and all that. We've got that all running and everything. If you're interested in a summit, especially the future ones, you can sign up right through that website. Same thing on our website. And then if you have any questions or anything, you can reach out to me. There's contact info on the website. You can also, see us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. They're all at Personal Survival Solutions. You can send a message. You can my number, Callie's number on the website are our personal phone numbers. Our emails are on there. If you want to send us a Facebook message, carrier pigeon, smoke signal, however you want to communicate, we'll answer back and answer the questions that you got.
There you go. There you go. Anything else you want to mention before we sign off tonight? We've been
I just
going
want to
about an
say
hour and a
thanks
half
again,
now.
Lee. I appreciate it. You
Yeah.
having me on. It's always good to talk to you. And
Always good to see you.
yeah, can't wait till we link up again and get
Sure.
to sit down and talk.
Are y'all coming to the reunion in December?
Uh, I got to look at the dates. I don't know if I'm in town or not. One of the
Okay.
gigs I'm doing is Texas A&M Marksmanship
Hmm.
Unit. I've been
Okay.
doing some training with them, and I know I got a thing at T1G
All right.
with them. They're snipers in December, so I got to look at the dates. I'm
All
not
right.
sure if I'm in town. I'm gonna at least swing down.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, hopefully so. We'll see you there.
Yeah, sounds
And
good.
all right, folks. going to tease a couple of upcoming episodes. I don't know when they'll all get put together because there's some moving parts on one of them. One we would definitely be doing one again on range medical plans, and I guess rather than range medical plans, just general medical plans too. Um, I've actually witnessed an individual have a heart attack at an event the other day, and um, just prompted to mind we need to be talking about that often. 16-minute EMS response time to a heart attack. That's a lot of time. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, where we were located, 16 minutes was like, wow, they were here pretty quick. Um, but not when you're the patient. It's not. So I'll probably be putting together a panel of people to talk about that. And then John Hearn did an in-person interview with someone. I'm not going to say who it was yet, and recorded that. And we're going to use that as an episode. I'm looking forward to that. And those are some things that are coming up. Shane, appreciate you coming on Sunday night here to record this. To the audience, we know that your most important asset is your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with us.